The two biggest concerns for me about how IP13 would affect my access to healthy, high quality meat would be one that in reading, as someone who's not a lawyer and as someone who's attempting to interpret this ballot initiative, from reading it, it appears that one of the biggest restrictions would be that it would be considered illegal and it would be considered animal cruelty to fatally wound an animal for agricultural purposes for the sake of processing it and selling it for meat. And so the first concern there is that while it would then theoretically still be legal to raise say a cow and let it die of natural causes and then eat that cow. The average age for a cow's life is some 20-25 years, which is a really long time to feed and maintain a livestock animal. And the longer that livestock animals are alive, the more tough the meat gets and the more difficult it is to cook with. And then the other concern is that the bill doesn't really take into account any adjustment of eaters' meat eating as a whole. There's the argument that the people at the IP13 make is that you could still, as an Oregonian, get your meat from another state. It would just be imported meat. And so, as a consumer, as a consumer who attempts to be ethical and conscious about where his food comes from, that's really concerning to me, that I would just no longer be able to go down the street to the farmer's market or to get meat that comes from somewhere relatively close to my house, within an hour of my house, that it would have to come from Washington, Idaho, or California at least, which would just require so much energy and so much more resource to get that food into the state, which would raise the price, which would make it even less sustainable to continue to choose to eat meat. Yeah, that's one of the really wonderful things about regional small farms, is that good farms are really transparent with their practices, and there are a few, there's at least one meat farm in the area that I know of that has an open door policy where I, as just any old person, can walk onto their farm and see their agricultural practices, see the animals that eventually become, the meat that I'm going to eat. And there's so much transparency and there's so much clarity about what's happening to the animals and where, how that food is going to end up on my plate. But if I have to go to California to get my meat, that immediately becomes so much less clear what the process is of getting it there. The need for more people handling my food becomes required, and the environmental pressure that creates, just the murkiness of that is unsettling to me, as someone who's gotten into sustainable food production because of the unclarity, because of the uncertainty, and because of the altogether shadiness of larger agricultural producers, especially meat producers. I think some of the economic impacts for eaters, first of all, are going to be increased prices in one way or another. Either increased prices directly in the cost of the product of the meat, because if it's not regionally accessible, or if it takes 2, 10, 20 years to produce a piece of edible meat, then the finances of the small meat farm just kind of start to break down. And so having to pay someone to transport it from another space, having to pay someone to raise it for several years, it becomes immediately an extremely more expensive product. I think that's the biggest thing that I perceive and consider as someone who thinks about farm economics as someone who wants to own his own farm, and someone who's working on farms right now. That's a big thing that I see on on the consumer side. And on the farmer side, like I said, you know, there's it's not that easy to make a living as a farmer. It's a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of sacrifice involved, including in our own personal finances. When I do the numbers of someone who wants to own a farm someday, I look at all the things that I'm going to have to say no to in my lifestyle to be able to say yes to producing high quality food. One thing is that a lot of farmers don't do just meat or don't do just vegetables. If I'm doing local honey as well, and then I lose my opportunity to produce meat, then my honey business gets strained a lot. And I might know for a fact that I can't sustain myself on that honey business, but the labor and the earning ratio of it makes sense when I'm doing meat as well. So it just immediately threatens the opportunity to continue making a living for a lot of people who raise more than just meat animals. Yeah, I think one important thing to note is that there's something really, really beautiful and really important as eaters, because you know everyone is an eater. It's just some of us are producers. An important thing to note is that we don't call animals eating animals murder in the wild. You know, there are a lot of animals that are carnivorous that survive off of eating other animals. And the beautiful thing about nature is that it has so much respect for itself and the other parts that make nature a holistic ecosystem. And so an unfair statement to tell someone else that they're in the wrong ethically for choosing to eat meat when it's something that we see occurring naturally in the wild quite often on a daily basis. I think another thing to consider is that a lot of mismanaged agricultural systems lead to a lot of environmental complications and issues. We're talking about CAFOs a little bit here. Confinement factory farms, they're an innately unsustainable environment because in some of them, for example, on a meat confinement factory farm or a cattle confinement factory farm, those cows sometimes never have a chance to put their hooves on grass, and all of their manure is going on concrete or like sand pits, and that manure has to go somewhere and goes into these giant cesspools for animal manure that are quite frankly disgusting, and are not allowing that manure to be reintegrated into the ecosystem in any way, shape, or form. When pastured cattle producers give all of that manure a chance to reintegrate into the system, because bugs eat it in the grass, because chickens pick through it, because any number of things are reintegrating the cow's byproduct back into the environment. I think one thing that's that I think about often is the amount of sacrifice that it takes for food to get on our plate, for us to be living our lives the way we are right now. I think when we're thinking about animals in our food system holistically, there's so much gratitude that we can express for the sacrifice that is their dying, so that they can sustain other parts of the ecosystem, be it just their body raw and decomposition, or to feed animals or to feed us. Sacrifice is such an important part of life. Like every single person who's alive has had a parent who has made a sacrifice to carry them in their womb for 9 months, to bring them into this world. There's a lot of sacrifices that that we make just by choosing to do the work that we do. I'm really grateful that there's a chance to utilize meat as a part of my lifestyle and my food system to sustain me. I hope to move towards more expressions of sacrifice, like rhythms of sacrifice and gratitude in all of my food eating and all of my meat eating, because everything that lives is a product of something that is